Well, on a wonderful Tuesday, cold, wintry evening, with 30 days to go to Brexit, me and my good friend Joe have been having a chat about what we're going to do tonight. And there's got to be one thing for it, isn't it? It's about KPIs, every numbers person favourite thing, every strategist's favourite bit in the toolbox. And tonight's show is going to be about driving business growth with using KPIs. I have got my wonderful friend here in the corner, Joe, looking very wonderful there with a red and a countdown Christmas clock as well. For those of you tripping along here thinking what's going on here tonight, this is our regular weekly broadcast Tuesday on the Business Growth Club. Me and Joe are going to have a chat about KPIs as we said here. If you're coming up on replay, brilliant. Thank you very much for all your company. Chat the comments in the comments box. Hashtag replay, I believe, is the magic phraseology. I'm just going to shut up for a few seconds and give you a chance to say hello, Joe.
Hello, how are you? It's good to see you. We've had a busy day, haven't we?
We have actually.
Yeah, a bit hectic, and we were chatting so much off air that we actually nearly forgot to press the on-air button, which was good fun. So
yeah, we were doing that thing where we try to be organised and suddenly think, oh, we got to think about what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, but that is my countdown Christmas clock. Well, it's not a clock; it's a thing, as you quite rightly pointed out. And we've had a really good week, a really good day, and it's not long now until 2021. So what better time to talk about KPIs? And if you're watching or listening in, then let us know where you're listening or watching from. Let us know if you've got any questions, how you do your KPIs. Do you have any? Because they don't sort of appeal to everybody, do they, KPIs, Mahmood? They're not like...
No, not at all. It's quite ironic, actually, because I was thinking, actually, as you were talking about Christmas, is that you've got your 24 days to go before Christmas. And you could actually argue that that is actually a KPI in its own right. I don't know what your experience on this one is, Joe, directly. I think when we talk about KPIs, people have an understanding what it means, when they know it's an indicator of some description. But everyone focuses on the measures, the numbers, okay? And for me, they miss out a lot of valuable steps about how to select the right KPI, how to make sure you don't get the wrong KPI. And it's probably the questions you need to have thinking about first before you even come up with the measures and the numbers themselves.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are very anti-KPIs. They're more intuitive and go, why do I need to measure anything? Because I know my business better than anybody else. I've got it all inside my head. I know where I stand. Those KPIs are just an extra thing that I'd have to do that doesn't really provide value. And then there are other people right at the other end of the spectrum who measure everything and sometimes can't see the wood for the trees in what they're measuring. And then the happy ground is somewhere in between, isn't it?
I think for sure. I think you're right there. I think if you're fixated on the idea of just measuring everything that moves, it's pretty much a waste of time. It will keep people who love Excel and spreadsheets and number crunching delighted, but you won't actually progress anywhere. If you're somebody who says, oh, I can navigate my path quite easily without having an idea what's going on, then I think you're actually on the road to probably hitting a brick wall there. You won't progress anywhere. For me, I like to think of it very much like a navigational tool. So you set your Northern Star, you set your path, you set your goal, you set your objectives, and how on earth do you actually know you're progressing in the right area, the right direction, unless you've got some indication of measurement, some indication of what those signals are that's flagging up. So for me, I think it's more of a navigational tool than actually a number in its own right.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. Completely agree with you. I think the key word in key performance indicators is key. It's about being really selective and picking the ones that make the difference to your business, the ones that are most meaningful to you. I think the other thing is I really like the idea of them being navigational, because another objection that I hear, and I'm sure you do too, Mahmood, is that people say, well, what if I set a KPI and I don't achieve it? Well, that's not what it's about, is it? It's not setting targets that you can go, yes, tick, I've made it, or no, I haven't. It's really to help support you in getting to your vision, your goal, wherever you want to be with your business. They're the stepping stones along the way that show how on track or not you are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it certainly came out. I know when we were going through the first iteration of the Business Growth Club here, and everyone was coming together with their journey plans. We've talked about it on previous broadcasts where we say, look, get the ideas dumped out into your head, get it onto a piece of paper, think about objectives, think about goals. it might seem to a lot of people like, you know, a lot of effort and energy to put in the beginning. Once you've got that, I like that idea you said about milestones. Set yourself milestones. And I think this idea about targets, the idea is if you just say, you know, I want to see how well I'm converting business, how satisfied customers are, you know, whether I think liquidity is an important thing. I know we're jumping the gun here. Well, you did identify what the question is you want answering. You identify what you think is suitable, and you're quite right saying a key KPI is, and then you set a target, and your target is your target based on what you've got by way of resources, your level of ambition. And if it's not there, if it's unrealistic, then reset it.
Yeah, it's not that anything has failed. It's just that you've got some feedback. You were hoping to be in one place, you're not there, or maybe you've exceeded it, maybe you've surpassed it, or you've hit it, whatever. It's just a way of having something to aim for that is a benchmark, so you can see objectively and without emotion how you're getting on with your business, how well you are actually working towards achieving those goals. And I think it's not about failure or not, it's about feedback, information, benchmarking and objectivity.
So where do you feel, Joe, that in terms of a lot of SMEs, whatever sector, so whether they're charity, whether they're not-for-profit, whether they're private companies, service businesses, what's the first thing do you found that benefits most SMEs? You know, when they're thinking about KPIs, where should they start?
Start with the end in mind. So start with what you're trying to achieve and how, and then once you've identified that, is work out how will you know when you've got there. So your business wants to be, or your charity, whatever it is, you want it to be in a certain place in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however long. What does that look like in terms of turnover, profit, number of employees, different types of customer, mix of customer, maybe brand profile on social media or elsewhere? So what does that actually look like? And then the next thing is really to say, well, where are you now? And look at the measures, you know, that you've got for each of those individual things. And then really it's about mapping how you're going to get from where you are now to where you want to be. It's about putting the actions in place as well that will deliver the KPIs. Just having KPIs on their own isn't particularly helpful unless you've got actions in place that you believe will improve those KPIs, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I like this idea because I've always got this thought that for businesses, it's about that little bit of a time machine, isn't it? If you get into a time machine, go forward a year, and you sat down and had that conversation with yourself and honest and say, you know, are we where we wanted to be? What have we achieved? What have we actually got where we thought we would be 12 months ago? And I love the idea. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Working backwards from the end point to the start point. And you're right, it's milestones. And the KPI is not an answer in its own right. It's just a marker. It's just a saying, yeah, this is what we think is important. This is for us. And also it's about making money. It's about improving performance. Whatever you think is important to your business here, it's saying, this is it. That's where I want to get to. Now let me set the milestones that tells me. It's being selective. So I think fewer, I don't know what the cliche is, but less is better than more.
Yeah, I think it's less is more, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely less is better than more. Definitely agree with that. And it's also useful to look back and say, what have you learned in the last 12 months? And I know for many of us, for most of us, this last 12 months hasn't been particularly typical of an ordinary year, but we've still learned stuff. So how are we going to roll forward that learning in terms of what we've done well and also what we could have done differently into next year? We've got Jesminara. Hi, Jesminara. And you're saying KPI with sort of a sort of face.
Well, let's hope we can convert to a nice smiley face by the end of this broadcast.
Yeah, I'd love to know, Jesminara, why do you feel that way about your KPIs? What is it specifically that's turning you off a little bit? We'd love to know.
Good question.
Yeah, good. So looking backwards as well as looking forwards, let all those lessons learned and then roll them up, but making sure there's an action plan behind them, because actually what your KPIs do is they feed back to you on how well the actions that you've put in place and what you're spending your money on, how well all of that is working.
Yeah, I mean, by way of personal, I suppose, parallel, I mean, I'm probably more of a couch potato these days than I'm opposed to a prime athlete. You might not think so looking at me. And I think if I was to set myself an aspiration, a goal say 12 months time that I want to be of particular fitness. So fitness was my end goal, my end objective here. That's great as just a general statement here. I might set markers along the way. I might measure it in terms of either weight, heartbeat, blood pressure, BMI, whatever. And then I think back and think, okay, what this means is if I break it down, it might mean getting blood pressure to a certain stage every month or so. That might be a good indicator. It might be if I do some activity like go for a walk every now and again, how long does it take for the pulse rate to come back to normal, whatever normal actually is? What's the initiatives I've got to do? Do I have to change diet? Do I have to exercise more? And that's really like that KPI route map for my own personal life. It's exactly, I would say, has a lot in common when you come to apply it in your business life as well.
In fact, I'm actually, you don't know this because I haven't told you, but I'm actually wearing,
oh, is that one of those smart Apple Watches?
It's my Fitbit. And
okay,
you're right, you know, so there's no one measure of health. You know, weight tells you something, or your blood pressure tells you something, or how fast you are over 100 meters, that tells you something else. So it's about what is the goal for health. And I'm obviously got lots of KPIs about how many steps, how much sleep I get, you know, how many calories I'm eating, how many glasses of water, all of those good things in terms of input measures. So you've got KPIs that are inputs. Are you doing the right things? Are you doing the things you said you would do? So my inputs, of course, are drinking water, eating right, how many steps. They're things that I can do. And then you've got output measures. So that's the result of that. And there's less control of the outputs from your inputs. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
it makes sense.
I do my best to lose weight, and I might lose some weight, but whether it's 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, or 3, you know, there's only so much I can do about that as long as I'm putting the right inputs there. You know, blood pressure is another one, for instance. So I think with KPIs, it's really important not just to have all output measures, but also to have some input measures. So then you can see how well your input measures are working against your output measures. So input KPIs and output KPIs.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think anything you do, I know we're going to talk about something called balance scorecard later on. Yeah. Anything you do has got to be a balance. So, you know, raw financial numbers, you know, can tell you one thing, but they don't paint the whole picture. Therefore, you need qualitative measures to come into it as well. And it's interesting, actually, we both talked about the idea of health and all the rest of it, is because for me, it's to say, whatever my journey plan is, whatever the KPIs that I measure, if I think I want my BMI to be a certain level, if I want my blood pressure to be a certain level, that's my target by month 1, month 2. If I don't quite get there, what I should be looking at, I shouldn't be flagellating myself or beating myself. I should think, what's happened that I haven't got to where I want to? And I'm asking those questions, and I'll look at it carefully, and I'd say, well, actually, I was a bit naughty. I didn't drink as much water. I've got too much salt in my diet. Take the same to a business. If a business says, you know, what's really important is that we have enough money in the bank, cash in the bank. We measure that by, you know, just pure cash flows. We measure that by how long it takes customers to pay us. If the bank balance is quite empty, and we look back at something like how long it takes us to collect money from customers, if it's not quite where we set ourselves to be, what's going on? Are we not getting invoices out on time? Are we effectively got some problematic customers? It's the questions that follow that evaluation that really are the insight. And I think a lot of companies, I've seen it in lots of sectors, they suffer because people are focusing too much of what the number is telling you and less about using the results of that to actually try and find improvements.
Yeah, and it's not about changing the goal or the vision if the KPIs aren't working. It's about using the KPIs to change your action to get the same goal or same vision. You might need to just move your timing back. And Jasminara is saying that it creates more work than it should. Now, what I find, thank you for that. That's really great, because what I find with a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises, and I'd be interested in your views on this as well, Mahmood, is that they don't have ready access to the data. So sometimes there's an objection that it's time, but if the data was at your fingertips and you were only measuring a handful of things, it actually wouldn't take that long. And I wonder why sometimes small businesses don't have the data to measure things. What do you think that's about?
I think there's probably a couple of 2 or 3 things. I think if you'd asked that question 5-10 years ago, I would say there's probably a lot of reasons why businesses of a certain size just don't have the resources to invest in what I call management information systems. However, fast forward as to where we are now, and you've got things like digital accounting systems, which can plug in with lots of different APIs. You've got websites, you've got social media outlets, you've got CRM systems. And the great thing is you can actually plug these together. So I think it's having that leap of faith that says, you know what, if I organize my filing system, for whatever better term, that I know what I want to measure. I'm going to start off with maybe half a dozen measures. I don't have to go for the whole suite. And technology harnessed with a human intervention can actually pull in all this data. The heavy lifting can be taken away from you. And then actually every month, I'm going to look at a set of reports that says, give me these 6 numbers that I'm looking at. And I think there's a bit of lack of appreciation. Businesses not necessarily, I know this sounds quite harsh, businesses not necessarily investing in infrastructure and things that actually collates and crunches the data. You don't have to be numerous. So I think 5 years ago, I think there's lots of arguments for saying why it's not done. Nowadays, personally speaking, I think there's less of an argument for actually not having that investment.
It's so cheap, right?
Oh, absolutely.
These systems are so cheap, and actually they save money in the long run. So as someone who used to spend a few hundred on just, matching bank statements to receipts to, invoices and doing all of that manually, copying them, sending them off to the accountants to do a manual VAT return and all of that. These systems that are so easy to use, you don't have to be a techie to use them. They're so straightforward. So Nadine's saying the more specific the KPIs, the better with flexible hows and being able to add new how. Yes. I didn't know I could do certain things until I was tested. Did that? I just missed the end of the...
Right, sorry, I'll pull that off quickly.
Yeah. So having those KPIs actually helps us to perform above and beyond and just push that little bit more to get that better result, which I think is fantastic.
It's having those conversations at the beginning, though, isn't it? I think it's having the time to invest in saying, first of all, do I understand my business? Do I know where I want my business to go? If you don't know where you want your business to go, that can always be fixed. That can always be resolved. But if you're living on a hand-to-mouth, week-by-week existence, that's no way to run your business. So you need to have at least say, this is where I'm going to be or want to be in 12 months, 2 years' time. Public sector organisations, they plan ahead 20, 25 years because, that's the nature of the beast there. But SMEs, 2 or 3 year timeframes are very achievable. Break it down.
Yeah. So what do you say then? I mean, I know I don't agree with this, okay, but I'm interested in your view.
Okay.
What do you say to small businesses that say, actually, things are always changing? Look at the last year we've had. What on earth is the point in setting KPIs when everything around is just moving so fast?
Well, I would agree with you in some respects. I think I have a recent case here. What I would observe, and it's not because I was there in Industrial Revolution times, what you see always is there are certain what I call basic bog standard business procedures and disciplines and things that happen that lots of companies may not have. So we talked about resilience, business resilience on recent broadcasts here. So for example, yes, the circumstance of the environment is different, but still some business fundamentals. The more extreme case I've seen recently is the Arcadia Group, which unfortunately went into administration yesterday. It was on the cards. I talked about it at the weekend. I've talked about it before. Is COVID merely accelerated their demise? If you look at first instance, they lost all their relevance to customers in the last X number of years. They hadn't invested for the future. They hadn't really embraced the digital age. There's lots of poor leadership things that were going on here. And for me, they were not really then in a position to take care of a change of landscape there as well. Yeah, things are always going to change, but if your systems are there, if your outlook is there, if your leadership is strong, you can to some extent adapt and bend with the curve. You look at companies that have been around here for a couple of hundred years, companies that have long standing, they're doing the basics correctly.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what sort of business people have got, because if it's a lifestyle business, you're happy with how it's ticking along, and and your ambitions in that are fulfilled and it's going as you, that's okay, that's one thing. But if you want to really grow, which is the space we're in, isn't it, Mahmood? It's all about sustainable, profitable growth, that you can keep going, and you're building the foundations for the future as well as growing right now. So if that's what it's about, professionalizing. Even as a solopreneur, we can professionalize. It doesn't mean that we're unprofessional. It just means we can get sharper. And I think without having some KPIs, they don't have to be loads of them, they don't have to be super time consuming along the way. It's sort of making it up as we go along. And business has to be improvised to a certain extent, but not everything improvised. It's about having that flexibility, that agility to respond and decide in the moment. It's also having the underpinning process, structure, and direction. So the other thing is that trends are really good to look at. So looking at your KPIs over time, it's not just about that 1 month and how you've done, or that 1 week or whatever it is. When you've got a few of them, a bit of a record of KPIs over time, you can see how you're doing, you can spot trends, you can spot patterns, and that can help you plan so much better for the future.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you've got a couple of peak ones here, and I think that's some great points there, Joe. If I look at any number collation, and remember, I'm not just talking about profit, cash, and all the rest of it. I'm also talking about customer KPIs. I'm talking about what you do internally with your team KPIs. I'm talking about external market KPIs. Whatever you think is important to your particular business, whatever your size is, measure the damn thing. Because if you don't, if it's not there to be measured and managed and all the rest of it, you're literally, as you said, making it up as you go along. And you can certainly adapt it. You can certainly change it there as well. But you look at patterns. So we know, for example, December for lots of retailers is going to be a very active time of year, about 25% of the trade. And we know January that it falls off the edge, relatively speaking. And that's, we know there's a pattern of a trend that happens over time.
Yeah, I was in, I live, as you know, I live in Ripon, but some people watching us might not know I live in Ripon in North Yorkshire. And I popped in to a coffee shop for a takeaway. And I said, how's trade? How's it going? Are you doing okay? And he said, actually, we're 8% up on the same period last year. And our opening hours have shortened and we're not allowed to do sit-in. We're actually, we're doing very well. And I thought, how great that the guy who was serving coffee, and it wasn't his coffee shop, he was an employee, said we're 8% up on where we were this time last year. Actually, it's going okay for us. So it can give you all sorts of reassurance. It can be motivational for employees. And also you can use this to help your employees perform even better. Well,
that's a great example, Joe. I would imagine in that situation as well, especially if it wasn't his coffee shop, not only are they tracking it, but the leaders and the managers and the owners of that place are actually sharing it with their team. They're saying, this is what we're sharing with you. And you're right, KPIs aren't just something for a certain level of management. It's to be shared amongst everybody so everybody knows they're going in the right direction. I think that's a great illustration about how KPIs should be used.
Yeah, definitely. And they provide reassurance. Also, we talked about input KPIs and output KPIs. There are also, we've got lots of things lagging and leading, so we'll talk about those. So Jasminara says, I agree with accounting software, QuickBooks, Xero, a lot of the management information is immediately accessible. Yes, I mean, I love those cloud accounting.
Yeah, absolutely,
systems. Save me so much time, so fantastic. Thank you for that. So with your lagging indicators, they show you what's happened in the past. A leading indicator gives you a hint that something is changing and that it's something to be looking out for, and nip it in the bud early if it's going to be a problem, or hop on it straight away if it's showing itself to be an opportunity. So input KPIs, output, things that show you how you've tracked in the past, but also that give you a glimpse going forward. So for instance, sales, if your sales start to take a bit of a dip, then you know to look out for that and maybe have a bigger sales push early, rather than seeing how it goes for a few months and then doing something about it.
I mean, I think on that one, that's a great example on the sales one. So you could dig deeper in that one. You could actually say, is a potentially a better KPI, instead of looking at sales, actually look at inquiries to conversions. So if I'm getting, for example, traffic off the website, how many of those trickle through to actual inquiries, and how many of those inquiries am I actually converting into business? If you're a not-for-profit organisation, you could be looking at, how many grant applications am I putting in, and how many of those turn out to be successful there as well. Because what that might say is, if the level of conversions are going up, something must be going on. You must have a degree of customer satisfaction. You must be getting better at what you do. And that's a great insight. If you've got lots of traffic, very few inquiries, very little follow on here, then something is going on with your messaging that you can address there as well. So sales is a great one. If you do nothing at all, measure something that's important. But if you're looking behind the scenes and drilling down even further, it just really gives you great, I think, valuable insights about what you need to look at to improve or what you're doing well.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say something and get it off my chest. If
Go on
that's
then.
all right.
Of course it is.
And I know you'll know what I mean by what I say. And that's measuring your social media followers isn't, yeah, and how many visitors you got on your website alone is not enough. Okay. So, and I know you know this, Mahmood, but I just really want to get off my chest because there's so much stuff out there that business growth depends on how you perform on social media, and that is can be an important and a very helpful thing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't measure it, but for some people, it's the only measurable thing they look at is how many followers, how many likes have I got, and
was that vanity metrics they call it sometimes, don't they? In terms of that,
Yeah, but it's not. It can be helpful if you use it with other measures in the right way, in the right context. So please don't think I'm saying never do it. But there's so much bad advice out there about this is how you get to, a 6-figure business from zero in 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is. And it depends on the sort of business, but you need to have other things in place. It's not just about that. And
100%. I mean, I think the social media, you're spot on there, Joe. And I think you have to watch out for what I call vanity metrics. And I think it's a bit of like a dopamine rush, isn't it? Everybody likes the fact that you do something and somebody says like, comment, or so that's great. And that's part of it. But social media is only one part of the marketing mix anyhow. Secondly, it's all very well having your post liked by several hundred people. But if those people are never going to buy from you, never going to do business with you, unless you want to do it for your own satisfaction, my argument would be, what's the point?
Yeah,
but you've got to be.
We're here, as you often say, that if your business isn't making money, you've got an expensive hobby.
Absolutely.
So if you want to do it and you enjoy measuring those things, or you enjoy what you're doing, and being in business isn't part of it, absolutely fine. Nadine, thumbs up, thank you. Nadine's saying that she agrees.
I'm going to share a comment of Nadine's made it also a very good point in a few seconds or so as well. But yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think you're right. Listen, you do a lot of good stuff in social media anyway, Joe. I've seen it, like it, and all the rest of it. But it's not about the likes. It's about the message that you want to share with your audience. Some messages that you want to profile more about, what you are like as an individual, sharing your thoughts here. But what drives you, and there's other ways I know you get business as well apart from social media. And I think also people out there, if you think social media is the only answer, it does work for certain types of business. So a digital platform, an online business, that's where most of their business will come. Great, but they'll be very selective. They'll do it with analytics. They'll drill down about the type of customers that are coming on, the number of conversions they're getting, what's the average spend per customer, all that stuff that's going on behind the scenes here. There's a science to it. But for a lot of other businesses here, depending on what you set your stall out to be, it may not be that important a metric. So be careful about how much time you're investing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I, like everybody else, I like to get likes and comments and, new followers. I'm quite a sociable person, so it's always nice. And I've met some fantastic people. At the end of the day, it's how much of that is, either a new business contact or something that will be, valuable, and how is that converting? So I think, what we're also saying is that it's about having balance, and we mentioned the balance scorecard earlier, but it's about having KPIs that aren't just financial, they're not just marketing, that they go across the board. So it could be, you might set yourself a KPI for how many hours you want to work or don't want to work a week, depending on what you're trying to do in your business. But we tend to set KPIs that are, financial, so sales, profit related, and things that point to that. Things that are customer related, how many new customers have you won, how many customers have you retained, and average, transaction value, and all sorts of things you can measure there from a customer point of view. There might be some operational KPIs that you measure. So by operational, that's how you run your business. If you're a florist, Have you delivered things on time? Have you had, how many complaints have you had? Have you, managed to do things that run your process the way that you wanted to run your process? And also people and team. How engaged are your team? Are they turning up? Have you got an absence issue if you run a cafe or whatever it is? So it's really thinking about what's right for your business, but having a couple of measures in each of those areas. So that
I think you're right. I mean, I think one number doesn't give you the whole picture, and this whole idea that if you think about what determines business success, and there's lots of things here. It's not just financial outcomes, even though they're important, but it's about customers being satisfied with what you're doing, being happy with what you're doing. It's also employees as well, what their relationship with you is. So therefore, those are things you've got to measure. So you've got to measure, as you said, whether it could be, if it's really important for your business that you have a real motivated, invested staff, then what's your employee retention like? What's your staff turnover like? How much are you investing in training and developing your staff? If you're giving the lip service, say our staff are important by not doing anything in that area, you're going to suffer. If you're saying that actually things like customers really value punctuality, responsiveness, being value for money, well, how do you compare in the marketplace with your pricing system? How many late deliveries do you have? What's the punctuality? What's the turnaround time? Those are things that are important to your customers. Then that's what you need to measure, and that's what you need to make sure what's going on in your.
Let's say you've been really struggling with cash flow and people haven't been paying on time and those sorts of things, then you could have a real concerted effort on setting yourself some KPIs to make sure that your invoices are sent out on time, that they're chased in, that you're measuring how promptly people pay, but you're also measuring on the creditor side as well. So you can actually use KPIs to zone in and see your improvement, and that's really motivational as well. So we've talked about big strategic ones, but also short-term troubleshooting, and to be motivated and just
you're right. It's a blend, but it's coming back to that thing we said right at the beginning. It's about the key. It's about choosing less, focusing on those. And there is sometimes what I find with some people there's a bit of an obstacle because they say, oh, I'd love to be able to measure this, but I can't because I don't have the systems. I don't know. And I would say, look, stick it in there. And sometimes KPIs are aspirational. You're not quite there yet. You haven't got the systems that collects that data. You may not be able to identify how you measure motivation in people, but there might be aspects of motivation that you can measure. But if it's important to your business, you've got to document it. You've got to put it on there. You've got to have it clear. And each, for example, month that goes by, you're going to say to yourself, this is what I set my targets for on my key KPIs. Where am I now? And if you're not doing that, it will just literally slip under the radar and it goes into that big in tray of it's on my list, and I'll forget it.
A good technique is actually to, when that happens, is I can't measure that because I haven't got the data. So it's to then go, well, how would you measure it how would you start to measure it if you didn't have the data? What would you do? Well, I would do this. I'd start, I haven't got any information about how happy customers are with the service. Well, so what would you do? Well, I'd start asking them and start, oh, there we go. You're off. You can start doing that. So what can you do? If you're not doing it now, what can you do? And what can you put in place at least to start? And that feels really good. And
I love that example because I think also it illustrates that a KPI isn't just a raw number. It can be an observation. It can be a questionnaire. It can be a survey. It could be, actually can be raw numbers themselves turned into something here. But so it could be a whole bunch of things. I mean, I don't know the last time you travelled, but I think they also do it in lots of hospitality places. Is they have these notices on the toilets where they actually publish how often they clean the toilets. And the reason they do that is because they found that in hospitality, customers value highly the cleanliness of the toilets. And therefore, if they have that as a KPI that's published there, that gives a degree of customer satisfaction. That gives a degree of the fact they're actually doing it, and that's just an observation.
Also, what gets measured gets done. I don't know if it's Peter Drucker or not that said that. I might be wrong, but what gets measured gets done, and it's also there because there is something like if you for staff to actually clean the toilets and make it look nice. and then put a squiggle on the chart to say they've done it, and for everybody to see that, that's really nice. You know, they get the same feeling that I probably get when I'm ticking something off my to-do list. It feels really good.
Sense of accomplishment, yeah, for sure.
People are more likely to do it on time because they've got to record the time and do the signature. You know, it actually drives performance. Just having to measure it and just having to write it down means it's more likely it will get done.
What was quite fascinating, just in terms of when we were doing the first Business Growth Club, is about all the different businesses that we were dealing with, about how many different KPIs came up. Some were very common amongst all of them, but actually in all the different types of businesses that were being presented, how they all came up with their own versions of a KPI that was important for their own business. I thought that was really quite good, that you've got a commonality as well as a flexibility there. Yeah,
and not every business had, I won't say too much about who had what, but not every business had any KPIs. So many of our Business Growth Club members were, in some cases, starting from scratch. And it didn't take long, did it? It was a couple of weeks to get 1 week to think about it and decide what they were going to be and why, and then put in place an action plan to get it going. And of course, some data isn't present and is going to build over time. But actually, you know, it doesn't have to be a whole heap of work or take an absolute age.
If anything, the work that was required has been done in the early stages, because you're articulating what your objectives are, you're articulating what's important to your business, you're articulating your journey plan. And when you can articulate that and you've got an idea of your elevator pitch, what your business represents, the essence of that, it's much easier to generate the KPIs that you need to actually document and set those milestones.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got a whole, we take everyone through a really good roadmap where all the pieces come together. So Nadine's saying, I'm planning 2 to 3 years ahead. I have a vision. When there's a challenge, I overcome it. This November is my best month ever since starting my business 5 years ago. That is an incredible accomplishment, Nadine, especially in this world that we're in right now. So big, well done for that. It's awesome, isn't it?
It's awesome. And, you know, ironically, actually, I can't remember who the author was, that they say typically, and there's been a shift also in lots of businesses where they always used to just focus on what's the end financial outcomes here. And big corporates have seen that actually we can't just measure financial outcomes. We've got to measure employee satisfaction, impact of the environment, our CSR responsibilities, all that sort of stuff. Actually saying the first 5 years in most businesses, as a general rule, very little value is created. You know, you're getting customers to trust you, you're building your infrastructure, you're learning, you're developing, you've invested a lot of resources in the early stages, market take-up is relatively modest. So the first 5 years actually is there's no significant value created. The next 5 years after that that's when the real profit generation happens, the real cash flows. I mean, you might be fortunate to do it much earlier, but as a crudity, most businesses, the real financial value is created probably 5 years hence as well.
Yeah, I just think that's an exceptional outcome from Nadine, given the world that we're in right now.
Oh, for sure.
So and well deserved, because you know, I see some of the things that you post and how hard you work. So that's brilliantly deserved. And
ironic as well, because Nadine, I believe, deals in the world of difficult conversations.
Well, probably lots of us are really valuing and needing what Nadine supplies right now. So Nadine, perhaps in the comments, just stick a link to the work that you do on difficult conversations so that people can see what you're up to. And in fact, most businesses fail, and most small to medium-sized businesses fail within the first 3 years. You know, there's something called the entrepreneurial sort of life cycle, isn't there? And you know, planning from the early stages is particularly essential, and that's hard because when you're just starting out, you really are trying to make loads of assumptions about how things will go, because you've no historic data or experience necessarily to base off, you know, to decide what your sales are going to be, how much you should invest, and so on. So, I mean, I know you've worked with loads of startups, but what would your advice be to businesses in the first 3 years about KPIs?
It's interesting. I've had a conversation with a couple of new startups over the last day or two, and I think for me, it takes on average about a year and a half just for your mindset to make that transition from perhaps a formally paid job into actually doing things for yourself. Yeah. Number two, I don't care what size you are, in the sense that I think you always have to have a plan. Even if you just say, basically, this is how I think things are going to pan out over the next 12 months, and then translate that to a basic financial plan. Think about, what do they say typically? Things take twice as long to realise than you expect. They cost 2 to 3 times more, and you'll be let down along that journey path there as well. And it takes that time, just I think, just to strengthen your mindset and to prove things here. So I think a degree of realism, a degree of saying you want to build this fantastic, sexy business. Great, that's your aspiration. So you've got to blend it up with a core bit of bread and butter to keep things going. You've got to learn how to run a business there as well. But essentially, it doesn't matter to me what size you are. You know, planning, think about the future, think about mapping out, and you know, even if you make a very crude list of how your business is going to shape, that's a plan that's better than nothing at all.
Yeah, and also, you know, more established businesses that maybe the owner or the directors have got an exit strategy and they want to position their business so it's of greater value to sell on, or whatever it is in the future. You know, it's really important to start thinking about that early and have KPIs as well. So I think at any size, any stage, absolutely. And we've got a fantastic, even if we do say so ourselves, I just realised what I said there, but we've got a fantastic business growth roadmap with some, you know, really just punchy, high-level things that people can be doing to grow the business, that we're supporting with some weekly emails, aren't we?
Now, so if everybody, what Joe just mentioned is absolutely 100% true. So if you either want to put your details in the comments box, we have next business growth club. I think it's 25th of January we've gone for, haven't we? Yeah. So we've got 25th of January. We've got a 10-week program that's going to be kicking off. We've already had one successful cohort. Everybody's been very lucky to see some of the previous alumni, I'm going to call them. So, you know, if you're interested in that for your business, by all means, drop a line. We do a regular newsletter, if I can say it, that is, where you'll get regular tips put into your email box. So have a look. The link is, I think it's coming up here. Yeah, so I'm really excited, actually. It's going to go pretty quickly because we're talking about, we've got Brexit coming up, obviously. So Brexit won't distort the roadmap we're setting ourselves out. And if anything, probably hastens the reason of doing it. 8 weeks' time, I think, less than that, it starts. Yeah,
absolutely. Less than 8 weeks' time. And also, you know, start thinking about next year now, because, and, you know, start thinking about what you want from the end of next year. I know that feels really incredibly hard, but if you do nothing else, get those, you know, have a session with yourself, get yourself a frothy coffee or a tea or whatever is, you know, a glass of wine, and sit down and think about, what have I learned this year? What's worked really well that I want to carry on into next year? What would I do differently? How am I going to translate that learning into 2021? And then come and get the business growth roadmap, and we'll help you out with some quick and easy tips on the way that'll keep that momentum going, so that you can start in January and start as you mean to go on and have a really, you know, cracking and strong year.
I love the reference there to the approach there as well. Look, if you're a business out there and you've had a rocky patch and your business is maybe it's at a certain point in time, you think about what to do next. Just remember, if you already have got some months or years of experience in business, at the very worst, you are an apprentice with experience or a startup with experience. So that puts you straight ahead of everybody else. You've got reflection time, but it's also about action time. And, you know, for myself, I'm excited about next year. I'm excited about every single year. And, you know, business is an enjoyable thing, but, you know, that you've got to get some basics right done as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, we'd love you to, you know, sign up, and also let us know what you'd like us to cover in these sessions. So we've got some great business growth club shows, if I can get my teeth in.
I know that one.
Lined up between now and the end of the year, haven't we, Mahmood? So we've got some guests coming on, and we've got some more different themes and things. So what's coming up?
Well, I believe next week we're going to be doing tips on productivity and efficiency.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about amphibians. We're going to be talking about showing some good practical tips. So what me and Joe love to do is to share practical stuff with everybody. So yeah, we'll give you some theoretical frameworks which underpins that, but it's about practical productivity and efficiency. I've got that teeth disease as well coming in. We've got a guest which will confirm when her people get back to me tomorrow. So we'll announce that later on. I think we've got a couple of more guests coming up between now and then, and we're aiming for a nice bit of a roundup towards the end of December as well.
Yeah, have a bit of fun, but also a bit of reflection as well, and a bit of looking forward to what's ahead. You threw me with the amphibian, but I've caught up and now I know what you mean, so I won't spoil
I hope
it.
it is an amphibian anyway.
I think it is. I think it is an amphibian.
We can discuss that off air just in case I got it wrong.
Yeah, if you're watching and listening and you know what we mean by the amphibian that's connected with productivity, then let us know, and we might even send you a special surprise.
No, I was going to say it in French actually, but Nadine's listening here, so she'll slaughter me if I mispronounce this anyway. So I'm going to give it a go. So it's about grenouille.
Yeah, very good. So
she's going to laugh now. She's probably laughing into her handkerchief. Oh my God.
Fantastic.
Listen,
Right.
so listen, what would be your one takeaway tip about KPIs for SMEs out there, Joe? Or for anybody, really. It doesn't matter if SME, big corporates, whatever.
Decide what's really important and in terms of getting you to where you want to be, and then just measure it and keep it simple, keep it easy, and make it useful.
Yeah, I like that. I would probably reinforce that and just say, think about the question that you want answered, and that will help you determine what the KPI should be.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Until the next week, everybody. And I believe we've got some special treats coming up for you, but we're going to sort out the tech later on. So we hope you love the broadcast. So please add a comment. Ideally, we love this broadcast so much we want to come and join you for the Business Pro Club's next cohort next year. If there's stuff you want us to cover in particular that resonates with business growth, pop it into the comments box and we'll do our best to add it to our schedule.
Sounds good to me. So see you all next week. Looking forward to it already.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.